Hello and welcome to Shred Show. I am your host, Chris Groh, and this is the internet's most fin-friendly surfboard show, where today we talk about fins with increased performance in the parking lot. If you want to win a set of FCS II Performer fins, and the boxes that go with them before most shops and shapers even have them, tune in later in this episode. Before we get started today, I want to give a big shout out to everyone who asked for Bonzers in last week's episode. Today we don't have a Bonzer, but we do have a board with Bonzer-inspired concaves. Not this board, but this board. If you are one of the very passionate Bonzer enthusiasts out there, please tell us about your experiences on Bonzers in the comments below. The Bonzer surfboard was originally invented around 1970 or 1971 by brothers Malcolm and Duncan Campbell. The general theory behind a Bonzer is that it makes a surfboard go very fast and have a lot of forward projection because of a venturi effect that the bottom contours and the fins create. Essentially, if you can imagine looking at this board and imagine it having a very long based fin right here that only comes up like that high off of the board, and a very deep concave here to the stringer and a very deep concave here to the fin, you can imagine a situation where there would be a ton of water being trapped in these two concaves because of the depth of the concave here and the way that the base of this long fin right here would create a wall that would just funnel water out towards the tail. If you want to see how a Bonzer surfboard would surf, check the video in the YouTube info below of Daniel Jones surfing a Campbell Brothers Bonzer. When you watch that video, pay attention to how much forward drive he gets off of his bottom turns. Generally, a Bonzer surfboard caters to someone who wants to generate a lot of speed and power off of their bottom turns and a lot of forward projection. People like Taylor Knox really like Bonzer surfboards because of the amount of drive and speed they can get off of their bottom turns. Many surfers, however, would say that they've never met a Bonzer that they liked because of how stiff they feel like the ride is and how inhibited they are when they want to get loose up in the lip or have really tight pivot in their turns. Traditionally, the shaper of Bonzers have tried to address this in part by making it so that the long-based Bonzer fin on the rail is broken up into two fins with shorter bases, helping the surfboard become more loose. But that's enough talking about a surfboard that I don't even have in my hands. One of the most noticeable things about a surfboard's design, as I wave this around, is the general outline shape and the tail shape. When you look at a surfboard in a shop, it's really easy just to look at how the board looks like this and how the board looks like this. But it's a lot harder to look at the concaves of a surfboard because it takes a really subtle eye. That's pretty unfortunate when it comes to checking out a new surfboard because the concaves of a surfboard are generally described as the engine of the surfboard. The concaves on this board are so subtle that you may not be able to see what's going on at home, but if you look at this with a very stringent eye, did I use that word the right way? What we notice is out here towards the rail like this, we have the beginnings of a single concave. But within this single concave on the Hideoscilous, something really interesting is happening. There is actually a double concave dropped within the single concave, which all in all makes for a very, very deep concave going through the first two fins. So deep that you may even call it toe depth, the depth of concave that is generally put into tow surfboards for like 50-foot waves. What that amounts to in theory is the type of horsepower that you'd get from a very deep single concave, but then within that deep single concave, we've dropped in this Bonzer-esque double concave, really adding a ton of horsepower to this surfboard. For a video of this board being surfed by Nick Rosa last weekend at Malibu, check the info for the YouTube video below. Pay attention to his last bottom turn and the type of speed he can generate off the bottom because of the concaves on this board and how that lets him get above the lip on such a weak, mushy Malibu wave. Rounding out the rest of this surfboard design is a continuous, smooth, flowing rocker through the board. Not a lot of tail rocker in the back, but it flows and continues smoothly from nose to tail. The outline of this surfboard looks pretty friendly, and the tail block is just wide enough to know that it will give us a lot of float going over little whitewater crumples or getting down the line on a flat-faced mushy wave. If you watch that video of Nick Rosa, it becomes pretty apparent that this board can be surfed in a very high-performance way if you're a really good surfer. When I first saw this shape, I thought it would appeal very easily to intermediate surfers who are just learning how to get down and hit the lip on an oncoming section for the first time. That's because of the type of float and stability such a wide outline can give you, and oftentimes with intermediate surfers, once they're good at pumping down the line, the next thing that they want to do is pump down the line and try to hit an oncoming section at their local beach break. A board like this, I think, can offer a lot of stability for learning those type of moves. This is also probably a very friendly shape to start learning the fundamentals of surfing. Bottom turns, curves, turns on the shoulder, but can also be surfed in a very high performance way. In the end, I think that this surfboard gives you a great opportunity to really gouge into your turns on small waves without bleeding off a ton of speed. Often when we surf small waves like mushy First Point Malibu, we can really get into our turns and push really hard into them, but by the time that we rebound back, the wave has kind of run away from us. With a board like this, because of these creative bottom holes, this will help you keep speed through turns and keep speed down the face of a wave. Which brings us to a conversation about talking to your shaper. This surfboard is not the Hideoscilous. This is the Monsta surfboard with a little bit of the elements of the Hideoscilous thrown into it and a little bit of the elements of the Monsta Chief thrown into it. You see, going to your local shaper and combining different elements of different boards is a little bit like going to your local gas station. If you're anything like me, you used to do this thing when you were a kid where you'd go to the 7-Eleven with your friends, get a soda cup, and fill it up with Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper. The end result sometimes didn't taste really good, but sometimes you really stumbled onto something special. A lot of Todd Proctor's team riders were really excited about the Hideoscilous concaves. And Todd was really excited to test out if those concaves would boost the horsepower of any surfboard that you put them in. So I said, hey, let's try those concaves on a board for me. I also told Todd about a wave that I surf often near my house that can get pretty big, a little bit scary, and is often very, very crowded. I told him that I wanted really easy paddle power on a board because I needed to work my way around crowds and get through them to get to places that I needed to be to catch good waves. I also told him I often needed to paddle out of the way of rogue waves so that I didn't get crushed. And I also told him that I was willing to sacrifice a little bit of performance on wave for added paddle power in the water. I also told him I wanted a really buttery drop-in, smooth and easy and early, and I also told him that this particular wave had a very long bowling section that didn't really give us the opportunity to go up and down in the pocket, but instead gave us the opportunity to race down the line, beat sections, and occasionally do long turns out on the shoulder. In the end, what I got was a board that combined some length and thickness elements of the Monsta Chief, combined with a board that has the rocker and general outline of the Monsta and the bottom contours of the Hideoscilous. Now this board has the new FCS II fin system, which means that we can pop fins in and out of the board pretty easily. The first obvious benefit of something like this is it gives you better performance in the parking lot. If you ever switch fins on your boards, you know what it's like to be hunched over in the trunk of your car, swapping fins in and out before a session. And this, as you can see now, just saves time in the parking lot before you surf. Many surfers much better than you and I, who have been surfing these fins for the past 6 months or so, say that these fins feel a little bit more drivey than the last FCS system, probably because of the way that they're more anchored into the bottom of the board. On the old FCS system, you can remember how there was just little tabs coming down here. These are much more anchored into the base of the surfboard. Because of that, they're actually anchored at the leading edge, and that means that you won't get seaweed or sea shrubbery or plants or whatever stuck under the leading edge of your fin, like what used to happen with some FCS fins. Lastly, what's most fun is it seems like you can switch fins pretty easily with your friends in the lineup between sets so that you can feel how different fins feel from wave to wave. The fin that we're going to talk about today is the FCS II Performer fin in Performance Core Carbon technology. When we look at this, it's pretty easy to figure out why they put carbon in the name, but we'll get to that in a second. First, we'll talk about the design of the shape of the fin. When we feel this fin, one of the first things that we notice is that it has an inside concave on the inside edge of the fin right here. Not up in the front, but concave back here, kind of by the second tab. What that kind of a concave does in a fin is it gives us the ability to push into our turns a bit harder and still come out of them with speed. But if we had this concave in this fin, coming all the way up to the tip of the fin, the board would get a little bit sticky and it would lose a lot of its loose characteristics. So what this fin has is flat on the inside edge right here and a concave on the second half of the fin coming back towards the trailing edge. If we look at the leading edge of this fin, we can feel that it is not really sharp. A lot of times we talk about fins in terms of the foil, which is the thickness of the fin if you're looking at it this way or this way. And if we look at this foil, we can see that it has a lot of convex coming out on this side and not a lot of convex coming out on this side. But when you feel this right here, you can feel that it has a slightly rounded inside edge, and this is probably like a 95-5 foil if you're looking at it this way. What that does is it helps the board sit down in the water a little bit, and it's good for chop in the water. It helps to break through without really disturbing your ride quite as much as it would if it was totally flat on the inside. The overall template of this fin is also really balanced. It doesn't have an incredibly long sweep back here. It doesn't have an incredibly thin or wide base. Normally when we talk about fins to try when you first get a new surfboard, we always say to get the Shaper's template to get a feel for how that'll surf, because most of the time, Shapers design the hull of surfboards with the type of fin that they use in mind. But in the case of FCS II, there are no Shaper templates yet, and this is the most well-rounded, balanced template that they make. So if you surf this one first, you can make changes to the type of surfing that you want based on more specific fin designs that FCS II made. Lastly, the materials of this fin. The black that you're seeing here is carbon, the blue is performance core honeycomb, and these black lines you're seeing out here are Kevlar. If that looks familiar to you, it's because this board and other Proctor surfboards that we've talked about use carbon Kevlar tail patches. The reason that the materials in this fin are so complex is that FCS is trying to engineer a very specific flex pattern for this fin using different materials that just isn't possible with the normal performance glass construction. That's why these fins cost more. Now Shred Nation, it is time for you to possibly get hooked up with FCS II fins and the boxes to go with them. If you want to win fins and boxes for your next custom surfboard, send an email to sendmesomefins@gmail.com. We'll put a link to that email address in the YouTube info below. When you send that email, all you have to do is tell us why you want this fin system in your next board, who you will go to have your next custom board made, or you have to tell us what sort of a board you will shape yourself with the system that we send you. At the end of the month, myself and a team of elite literary geniuses will pick our favorite email, and we will send you some fins and boxes for your next board. So log into Gmail and email us now. If you've ever had any positive experiences talking to your surfboard shaper and come up with a really cool board that you have really liked, please tell us about your experiences in the comments below on YouTube. If you're excited to surf the new FCS II fin system, tell us why. That does it for this episode of Shred Show. We really hope the waves are up wherever you are, and we will see you next time.